Mr. Plank, we're talking about the leases, and I guess I should say it in a different way. Did you give these leases as you received them to Fifth Third Bank?
Yes, I did.
And Mr. Specht was primarily the person that you dealt with there, correct?
Yes.
He also worked with other people.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So as you got leases, and as you got the LOIs, did you send them to Mr. Specht or
Yes, I
someone
did.
else at Fifth Third Bank?
Yes, I did.
As far as the lease concerning the restaurant, and did you have discussions with Mr. Specht about what that restaurant was going to be?
Yes, I did.
Did he know that you and Joanne were going to have a restaurant and banquet center?
Objection again is asking what Mr. Specht knew.
I'm sorry, did you tell Mr. Specht that you and Joanne were going to have a restaurant and banquet
Yes, I
center?
did.
Okay. And in the red book, the Fifth Third Exhibits Finder, Exhibit 44H is the one I'm referencing. Okay, thank you. Rich, I know you have some trouble reading, but if I point, will you be able to see if I get close and point? Okay. In reading this, Mr. Specht stated to you in an email dated September 28th, I know you are going to occupy the second building with the restaurant and banquet facility. Is this, in your mind, confirmation that he understood that this was going to be a restaurant?
Again, same objection as to what Mr. Specht understood.
The reading speaks, the writing, email speaks for itself.
Right.
And Mr. Specht also asked you at this point about getting leases,
Yes.
correct? Did you tell Mr. Specht before you closed the loan that you were going to operate that restaurant?
Yes, I did.
You and Joanne?
Yes.
Okay. And then later, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when Ms. Steiger got involved, after Mr. Specht left the bank, did you also give Ms. Steiger a copy of the lease that your wife signed for the restaurant?
Yes.
And when you gave it to her, did you tell her, this is my ex's lease?
Objection, hearsay.
Did you tell her that, hey, this is Joanne, my ex's lease?
Objection, hearsay.
Did he tell somebody?
Did he tell Joanne Steiger? Yes.
Well, that doesn't make it any less hearsay the fact that he's here in court. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered in court to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
Of what he said.
It's his own
It's
statement.
his own statement.
His own statement does not make it not hearsay.
Rich, did you give that lease to Joanne Steiger and say, here's my ex-wife's lease?
Yes, I did.
Now, we talked a little bit about the first two buildings that were going to go up. The bank was going to fund construction for 4 buildings, correct?
Correct.
In the first phase. And now as to the second two, did Mr. Specht and you discuss that you were going to have the leases up front for those next 2 buildings?
Yes. Yeah, kind of reversed.
Okay. So for the first 2 buildings, what was the situation?
We build them first, then get the leases.
Okay. And for the second 2 buildings, what was the situation?
Get the leases first and then build the building.
Now, as far as the residential leases, when Joanne Steiger came out to meet with you, did you take her on a tour of building number 2?
Yes, I did.
And building number 2 was almost completed, but not totally completed at that point,
No,
correct?
right.
Okay. But you were starting to finish 2 residential units, were you not?
Yes, we were, yes.
Okay. And did you take her up and proudly show her what was going to eventually be your unit?
Yes, I did.
You weren't trying to hide this from her, were you?
No, not at all.
Did she tell you ever at any point, you can't have these units in here?
No, she did not.
Did she ever say, hey, if you don't pull these units out, we're not going to fund the project?
Objection, leading.
If she had told you that, what would you have done, Reg?
We'll stop. We're building them. Because I had interest in, if I didn't make residential, I would have made them into offices.
So if she told you, that's it, no more loan money, You would have changed those units, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would have.
Now, as far as the lease that you gave her for the restaurant, did she ever tell you that that lease wasn't okay?
No.
And as far as the other residential leases that we've heard about, you had LOIs that were signed in March by people like Rachel, correct?
Yes, I did.
And did you think there was any problem with your family members living in the building with you?
No.
If you had, were there other people who had different last names who you could have gone to and given them leases to sign instead?
Those are the people who were interested, yes.
So Rachel and you weren't the only people interested in that building, correct?
Correct.
When Joanne Steiger got involved, did you give her, I'm sorry, let me back up for a minute. When Joanne Steiger got involved initially, did she come to you and say, we don't have any leases? Was she initially missing all of the leases and all of the files?
She was missing a lot of paperwork.
Okay. And what did you tell her?
I said, I'll give you copies.
Okay. And did you tell her you'd already given copies as well?
Yeah. She said that Brian lost them all.
So, did she go back and look for them?
I don't know if she did or not. All I know is we made copies of it and gave it to her.
Let's pull up her email of May 19th, which is in the juror's book, the white book. I think it's tab 6, 192. Came off. Let me check that out. I'm sorry, this is away. It's in. Okay, there it is. All right, Rich, can you see this on the screen? Is it big enough?
Yes.
Okay. As to Ms. Steiger's email, May 19th, is this the first you'd ever heard from her?
I think so.
Okay. And did she say that here, I'm your new relationship manager since Beth left the bank, and she had a few questions, correct?
Yep.
All right, this first point she asked you about, identification of renumbered buildings. Please match the building up with its position on the plat map that was provided. When you met with her, did you match the buildings up like she'd asked you to?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that that issue was resolved for her?
I thought so, yes.
Okay. As to number 2, proof of the 210 equity contribution, $840,000 for buildings number 1, 3, 5, and 6. In which Pittsburgh deposit account are these funds being held in escrow? At that point, did you tell her you had a lot of funds into the project?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell her you thought you'd put in what you needed to put in?
Yes.
Did this make sense to you that you would have to have the equity requirement for all of the buildings?
I don't think it makes sense to me,
Okay.
because they were taking it right out of my drawers.
Right. And was that draw 2 where they took the 210 out?
Yes.
And also on the first draw at closing where they took the 360 out for the site work?
Yes.
And then did you also believe at that point that you had funds in for what you paid for the architecture and the site planning?
Correct.
So you had above and beyond just the amounts they had taken out as far as you
Absolutely.
knew?
I had a lot of money in Building 6.
And did you tell her, I think I've got my equity in?
Yes.
Okay. And what'd she say? Was she going to check on that?
Yes, but I never heard back from her.
Okay. And did this portion of her sentence make sense? In which Fifth Third deposit account are these funds being held in escrow?
What account?
Sure. I mean, how would they be in an account? Did that make sense?
No, it
They would
didn't.
be in an account if they're supposed to be in the building?
No, because they were taking them out of my drawers. they put them.
And of course, the money taken out of the draws would go into building the building, right?
Yes, it would.
If money was sitting in an account, could it build a building?
No. Only the funds that were borrowed could build a building.
As for this number 3, copies of leases and rent rolls for building number 2. Is this building 75% leased up? Did you think that the building was 75% leased up?
Yes, I did.
And were you considering the fact that the whole lower floor was occupied or leased?
Yes, it was, yes.
And then you thought the residential leases as well?
There and a couple other businesses up on top.
Okay, so there were already other businesses that had interest in renting
Yes.
some of the additional spaces?
Yep.
Do you know who those were?
Keepsake and Drive Betty.
Okay, and also was there a Raymond James
Raymond
financial?
James was interested too.
And those all ended up moving in?
And they're all in there, yes.
Okay, they moved in eventually, correct?
Yes.
Copies of leases and rent rolls for building 5 or 6 on the west side of the site. Is this building 75% leased up or was it pre-sold? Now, which building was that?
It was the restaurant.
And that building was 100% accounted for, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was.
So did you think you had any problem with all of these points up to point 4?
No, I didn't think so.
Okay. And then point 5, copies of leases and rent rolls for the other buildings currently under construction. Did she think that you needed to have leases already?
And that's where they changed up. Before I had to build the buildings, then get the leases. Now I had to pre-lease it, then build a building.
Okay, but you weren't building the second 2 buildings out of 4 yet, were you?
No, I wasn't.
So you didn't think you had to have leases yet for them, did you?
No.
Objection, meeting.
Mr. Plank, were there already businesses that you were talking with about leasing those additional 2 buildings
Yes,
that were
there was.
within the 3rd and the 4th one built?
Yes.
Can you give an example?
Building 1, which is on the north side, right across from Building 2, there was a diner or a Hammond that wanted the whole first floor.
Okay. And was there also a beauty parlor interested in another building?
In Building 4, yes.
So you were working on that, but you didn't have leases yet for unbuilt buildings, did
No, I
you?
didn't.
Okay. And number 6 here, according to the inspecting engineer, Flexicor material was ordered for 4 buildings and is currently being stored off-site. Did you talk to her about what that was and why it was being stored off-site?
Yes, I did.
And what was that reason?
It's very common.
Where is Flexicor produced?
What?
Where was the Flexicor produced?
And I think it was near Andy.
Okay. If it was being stored in Bloomington, do you think it was produced in Bloomington?
Yes,
Is that why it was stored where it was produced?
as it was.
Did you think that you had satisfied Ms. Steger's questions here?
I think so.
And did you think she had problems at that point?
No, she didn't say so.
Okay. Did she email you back on May 30th, a few days after your meeting? Let me show you in the white book. Where the white book? Okay. Thank you. It's 6A194. You know what? I'll just pull it up. That'll be easier. Okay. On May 30th, can you see that up on the screen, Rick? Okay. Did she email you and say she couldn't find the leases and the LOIs we talked with her about from the first meeting? She said she checked and she couldn't find the leases or LOIs?
Yeah.
So what did you do after that? Did you give them to her?
Yes, I did, and the copies of them given to her.
Did you give her copies of these leases and LOIs several times, in fact?
Yes, I did. She said that Brian lost all of them.
Brian Specht, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you kept giving her these copies that she asked for.
Yes, I did.
And when you gave them to her,
I
did
thought
you
it
say you were doing what she wanted you to do?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you this lease isn't okay because it's your daughter?
No.
Did she ever tell you this lease for Building 6 isn't okay with the bank because it's your ex-wife?
No,
Or
I never
your-
said nothing.
And of course, Joanne Joanne wasn't technically your ex-wife,
No, we just separated.
but you were living apart,
Yes.
and she had gone to see an attorney about filing for divorce.
Yes, you did.
Is that why you represented her to be your ex-wife?
Yes.
At any point, Rich, were you trying to hide that this project was going to involve a restaurant that you and your wife were going to own?
No.
Now, there's been some talk about the Scleropolis LOI. When you got that, well, first of all, can you tell us who Ted Scleropolis is?
And he owns TGS Petroleum. He's a petroleum distributor. I used to work for him a month ago.
Okay, and he was an acquaintance of your father as well?
Yes, he was.
So this is someone you've known for a long time.
Yes, I have.
And was he interested in being involved in this project too?
Yes, he was.
Now, when you and Joanne initially separated, and she's looking to file for divorce, were you going to try to make sure that that restaurant had someone who was going to lease it or own it, even if you and Joanne didn't end up going it together?
I tried to.
And is that why he signed that lease in January?
Yeah, he ended up buying the whole thing.
Ultimately, he bought the whole thing from
Yes,
the
he did.
receiver, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, is it your belief that he had a lot of interest in getting involved in that building?
Yes, he did.
Objection. Belief as to what someone bought, Your Honor.
But did he have an interest in objection sustained?
Rich, when you talked with Joanne Moore, did she want to still be involved in the project with you?
Absolutely.
Did she still want to run the banquet center?
Yes. She already had it booked up for a whole year.
And once you realized that Joanne still wanted to move forward with you professionally, did you have her then sign the lease for the restaurant and banquet center?
Sure.
And I think you were telling me a little bit about the banquet center. She was already getting it booked?
Yes.
And how far ahead was it booked?
She had it booked for a
Objection
year.
here, say,
Whether or not he
How
knew it
far
was
ahead was
booked.
booked over with?
Okay. How long was it booked, Rich?
For the year.
Rich, are you still close professionally with Joanne?
Yes, I am.
Does she still help you?
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's been a little discussion about Rachel's lease upstairs. When you were deposed back in 2009, did Rachel live there yet?
No.
When did she move into City Center?
I don't remember the date.
Was it after your stroke?
Yes.
So sometime after 2010? Did she move in to help you out?
Oh, yeah.
Now, when she signed her lease initially on June 1st of 2006, did she want to move into City Center?
Yes.
Was that her plan?
Yes.
Was a unit ever available for her or built for her at that point?
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually it became available, right?
Yes, yes.
But it wasn't when she initially thought it would.
No, it wasn't finished yet.
Okay. But of course, back in 2009, when you gave your testimony would have been that Rachel didn't live there, right?
Right, she didn't live there yet.
She hadn't moved in yet, had she?
No.
We've also heard some discussions about the credit memo, which is Exhibit 2 in the party's joint binder. Let me just put it up on the screen, I'm sorry. That'll make it easier for you, Rich.
Okay.
I apologize for the delay. Page 3. Okay, let me... Okay, on the bottom paragraph, oh, I didn't put it on the screen, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. The bottom paragraph of this credit memo states, the buyer is a restaurateur that will operate their first floor as a restaurant and the second floor as a banquet facility. Now, am I understanding your testimony right, that you always told Mr. Speck you were going to own the restaurant?
Yes.
Okay. So if there was a representation about some other restaurateur, do you have any idea where that would have come from?
No, I don't.
But that's not something that you generated, is it?
No, although we did have another restaurant move in.
Are you talking about the grill and
The
building
Grill.
too? Okay.
Yes.
That's not the restaurant that he's talking
No,
about.
absolutely not.
Okay. Sorry. That's okay. Rich, did Joanne Steiger ever tell you, when she got involved, that she was going to recommend that funding be discontinued for the loan agreement because you didn't have enough equity in the project?
Yes.
She told you that?
Yes, she did.
What did she tell you?
When she looked at the condo.
What did she tell you when she looked at the condo? That you shouldn't build any more?
No, she didn't say that.
What did she say?
She said that if they were indeed condos, that they wouldn't finance them. And people wanted to buy them.
Was that about not building any more condos? She didn't want you to build any more condos, right?
No.
Okay. But she knew that your condo was there, correct?
Yes.
And she didn't ever tell you to take that condo out?
No, she didn't.
Okay. And she didn't tell you the bank's not going to fund the loan because of what you'd already built, did
No.
she?
Only if people were buying it, they wouldn't fund them.
Okay, if a condo owner was going to come in and buy it,
Right.
they're not going to take out a separate loan.
No, they wouldn't put it on it to them.
Now, did she ever tell you, though, that any of the leases that you had were unacceptable?
No.
Did you have that understanding at any point from her?
No, I didn't.
If she had told you that your lease was unacceptable, would you have gone and found someone else to take that lease?
Objection, that's an answer. He already said he wouldn't.
Rich, is this November 17th, 2006 letter from the bank's attorneys the first notice that you received that the bank was going to stop funding? The first written notice from the bank that they were going to call default?
Tell me what it says. I got left side neglect really bad. I can't read it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you need a minute to look at it, or do you want me to bring it up to you?
What?
Do you want me to bring it over to you in the book? Would that make it easier?
Yeah, that's read it to me.
You know, I'll just read it to you. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, this is the November 17th, I believe. Sorry, I cut the date off. Letter from the bank's counsel, and it says, Dear Mr. Plank, I'm writing with respect to promissory note, long numbers, executed by City Center Complex and guaranteed by Rich Plank in favor of Fifth Third Bank. The following default has occurred. The borrower failed to timely remit payments on the notes. Before getting this written notice, had you gotten any other written notice that you were going to be in default?
Absolutely not. There were no payments.
And can you explain that? I'm sorry. I think I'm cutting you off here.
When you said there should have been payments, and there were no payments to submit.
Is that because the note had an interest reserve account?
Yes. For the interest, yeah.
further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
I ask just a minute. The Flexicor that was being stored off-site, that was for 4 buildings, right?
Yes,
But you're only building 2, right?
yes.
So if you were buying materials for buildings 3 and 4 before building 2 and 6, that violates the loan agreement, correct?
I don't know.
And you don't know because you never read the loan agreement.
That's correct.
You never intended to be bound by its terms, did you?
Only on the payment?
You never intended to be bound by the terms of the loan agreement, correct?
No.
No, that's not correct, or no?
That's correct.
That is correct. You never intended to be bound.
Right.
True. You say you gave the leases to Brian Speck, and then either he lost them or Joanne lost them,
Right.
correct?
Yes.
And did that include the lease with Joanne Barner?
I believe so.
No. The lease is dated May 1st of 2006. So if Brian Speck was gone by then, how could you have ever given it to Brian?
Must be mistaken, I don't know.
Did you give Brian a copy of your lease? What city center?
I can only assume I did.
And your lease, Exhibit 67A, is dated June 1st of 2006. So if it's dated June 1st of 2006 and Brian was gone, you didn't give him a copy of that lease, did you?
It's not.
And does that include the lease with your son? Did you give that a copy to Brian Speck?
I don't know.
Well, you testified on direct exam that you gave Brian copies of all of these leases. Do you think maybe your testimony on direct exam may have been incorrect?
Your Honor, objection. He's mischaracterizing the testimony. I asked if he gave the leases that he had. Did not ask about his son's lease specifically. I didn't ask about the specific leases, and this is confusing the issue.
Cross-examine, that's what I'm asking.
And I guess
Which
Your
leases he gave and which he didn't.
All right, ask which leases he gave, which he didn't.
Did you give the Richard H. Plank lease to Brian Speck?
I don't know.
Did you give the Rachel Plank lease to Brian Speck?
I don't recall.
Did you give the Anthony Santacarina lease to Brian Speck?
I think so.
Well, if it had stated June 1st of 2006, how could you have possibly given it to Brian Speck?
I couldn't have.
Did you give Brian Speck the I withdraw that. You never produced any documents for any condominium declaration for any building. Is that true?
I don't recall.
That's the question.
Redirect.
Just very briefly, Rich, we have a bunch of LOIs at tab 70 of the red binder. And the LOIs that are dated earlier, March, April, when Mr. Speck was still at the bank, are those the materials you would have given him?
Yes, probably.
And Would you have given him any leases that you had before he left the bank?
Any ones I had, yeah,
Okay, so you gave Mr. Speck what you had as you got them, correct?
yes.
And then when Joanne Steiger got involved, did she tell you, hey, I want leases instead of LOIs?
Yes,
And then did you go and get leases for everybody who's giving you an LOI?
I did, yes.
Is that why all of the leases, as far as the residences, are signed on June 1st? Is that why the leases are signed on June 1st, the residential?
I think so.
Okay, and then did you give those June 1st leases to Joanne Steiger?
I gave him everything I had, ever got it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Just so we're clear, which leases did you give to Brian?
I don't recall, whatever I got.
No further questions.
Sir, the jury may have some questions for you, so just remain there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your opportunity to ask any questions you desire to ask of the witness. Please place them in the basket when you're completed.